AzPPO Town Hall meeting. It's 5 p.m. on January 26th, Thursday, 2012.
Really disappointed about that.
Oh, yeah, college is great. There you go. Oh, I gotta go back.
I knew where to go when I still had it. You were right last time I was going home. Freeway. Last time I was going home. Someday. Oh, yeah.
yeah?
So I'm cruising around the other day, and I was telling you, if I see you text me, I get your phone. So the day where I'm driving, I started texting my son.
Oh, no.
Dad!
Dad!
He's the same boy when he's like 3 years old, and he's trying to do something.
He was there, Henderson, used to be a manager.
And my wife just went, why did you hear that? Dad? I'm not in trouble that day. My daughter's 19.
Yeah, good to see you. We still see the old guys.
I guess so. He's a good guy. So I think he's 23. He works in the they're going to get married.
Yeah, I was the wrong man.
He's left.
Well, that's why I know all the licenses. Yeah, I was over at the ag research or something.
He's going to be an EM2 and he's going to get the fire something. He realized that he's not going to make enough money, so he wants to get a lot of higher.
I think just a couple minutes, we're waiting on Andrew to get here, and 1:30 is around the corner.
That's fine. Couldn't find his way in. It's like the rest
I know.
of me.
I guess so.
There's sodas and water up here too, if anybody wants anything.
I was prepped to go. You rolled out. I lost one.
We can have. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I am Andy Wisher, president of AzPPO, also owner and operator of Scorpion Tech out of Mesa, Arizona. As you guys are all aware, this is a second town hall meeting. We did one in Tempe, and this is the first one in Tucson. So I appreciate you coming out. For those of you who don't know, I guess I think most of you know Ryan Martin. He is president-elect for AzPPO, and Frederick, past president, you guys all know him, I'm sure. So we'd also like to introduce Jack Peterson, director of the Environmental Services Division of the Department of Ag, as well as acting director of Office Pest Management. So, and then Dave Burns here representing the task force. Just a little bit about AzPPO, those you don't know, we are a statewide association representing approximately 100 members statewide, and that is constantly growing. We would encourage you guys, if you want to know more, talk to me, talk to Ken, talk to Ryan. You know, it's the perfect opportunity to get involved and to have your voice be heard outside of even just this kind of forum. And again, we are a association for all the companies in the state. You know, I have anywhere between 4 and 8 employees at a given time of year. I'm a small business, the owner operator, and then up to larger size companies as well. So at this point, we don't have a date for the next town hall meeting here in Phoenix, but those will be forthcoming. Check your emails, and again, if you haven't done so already, if you want to know when stuff's happening, put your information here. There's also a listserv through the Department of Ag for that on the website, so you could go there as well and put your email there. And then housekeeping, you can sign in, put your supplement sound if you don't mind, and at this point, we'll turn the time over to Jack first. Jack here, and then after that, we'll turn the time over to Larry Boyd.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to say. I mean, you've got most of the things that are on here. I guess the only thing I'll say is the next task force meeting is scheduled for February 15th at the Department of Agriculture. We were having a hard time finding a location. Somebody had our plan confirmed, but the finding came down, and we actually had to almost because we couldn't find. And we tried all over in all the state buildings and couldn't find one. So it's going to be at the Department of Agriculture again. And this next meeting, we've been asked to prepare proposed language for the qualifying party requirements, and also language dealing with the TARPs. And I guess I'll just put out that based on the responses that we received at the town hall meeting and at the task force meeting, people have said the QD is is a good thing. And so we're approaching it from that standpoint that the qualifying party will continue. And there will be some differences. There's always been concern about the $3,000. So we're trying to deal with some things to make it a little different. People can get into some of these things, so it's not insurmountable. But I also heard loud and clear about the professionals. Folks want to make sure that you maintain professionalism within your industry, and so that you don't get a black eye. I think that's probably about all I need to say. We'll get it out on our listserv as soon as we get things done. Never seems like it's soon enough, but we will get it out as soon as we can. So, anybody have questions? Thanks, Jen.
My name is Courtney Levinus. I'm with Capital Consulting. We are a lobbying government affairs firm in association management. So we actually have double duty for AzPPO. We represent you all at the state legislature. And Heather in our office also handles the association management, so the events, the meetings, the board meetings, financial, Heather handles. So we're very involved in the organization. But what I thought we'd do is just kind of start off with just a quick overview of what's taken place at the task force meetings to date, and kind of what's coming up. When we had the town hall in Phoenix, and I recognize some cases from that town hall as well, we kept it just really informal, just sharing of ideas, thoughts, and opinions, so that Jack and the task force members can take that back to the task force, again, their next meeting on the 15th. And we will also be writing up all the notes and sharing those with the task force so that they understand the needs, and desires, and opinions of the industry. So it's good to see so many of y'all here interested in where we're going. Just a quick kind of overview as to what brought us here today. I know many of you guys know this, but Senate Bill 1194 from the last legislative session basically temporarily moved OPM to the Department of Agriculture. They set up a task force which consists of 3 members from the ag community, 3 members from the pest management community, 2 members from the Agriculture Advisory Committee, and then 1 member from the Department of Ag, which is Jack Peterson. And then on or before December 15th of this year, we need to go back to the legislature with statutes with a formal plan to fully incorporate OPM into the Department of Ag. And so that's over the next several months, and through the task force, we're going to continue to review all the laws, regulations, rules pertaining to structural pests. Jack has already done this, and we've already obviously finalized the move, and that was in July. Seems like yesterday. So everybody is formally in the Department of Ag. There was, significant reduction in staff. They're able to share some responsibilities with existing staff in the Department of Ag. So there was significant cost savings. And then finally, we need to recommend to the legislature the statutory changes that we think are necessary to fully incorporate into Department of Ag. To this date, we've had 4 task force meetings. I think last meeting, which was very well attended, say we had 30, 40 people.
Well, I think more than that.
Is there more than that?
Yeah, I'm going to say it was 50, 60 people.
Well, at the last
We set up chairs in there.
Yeah, we were
It's
crammed in there. But it was great because there was a lot of feedback, and I think especially for the task force members that are on the ag side, it's been a real educational experience for them. They don't necessarily understand structural pest management, and so it's been a real learning experience for them. So I think to see such a great turnout last month was fabulous. This next meeting is critical. The next meeting we're really going to be making some final decisions on the qualifying party. And I think there's a sense on the task force that once we kind of get through that section of the statutes, that things then will progress a lot faster. But the qualifying party was, significant provisions and statutes, and obviously it has generated a lot of interest. The earliest that legislation, again, would be introduced is January 2013. So any changes to the statutes, laws, regulations wouldn't go into effect until probably July-ish of 2013. That all, depends on when the legislature goes into session, in session, and when all the bills become effective. So the earliest we're really going to see anything is, a year and a half roughly from now. So we'll have plenty of time to prepare. A couple of things that the task force has made a decision on thus far is that going forward, and again, this will be 2013, the Department of Agriculture will not be doing or requiring the background checks. That is something that if your company feels that those are necessary, then you'll need to complete those within your own corporate structure and not rely on Department of Ag to do background checks on licensed applicators.
Courtney, can I just make sure to clarify, that is a recommendation that the task force has made to go to the legislature. So it hasn't been enacted or anything like that, so everybody needs to continue to operate as they have until all this happens. Like she said, that's at least a year and a half away. So, but that was one of the things that the task force is wants it part of the report.
And we'll really go from there into kind of a hot button issue, and that's the qualifying party. And again, we'll just open it up for discussion and thoughts on, do you like the existing qualifying party structure? Do you think the hours should change? Do you think the education requirements should change? And maybe what we should do is start with that, and then once we kind of air that discussion out, then we can go into the qualifying party and should the roles and responsibilities of the qualifying party change. Should they have more responsibility? Should they have less responsibility? And maybe we break it into two parts and start with the education requirements first, and I'll open it up. Oh, and if y'all will at least do me a favor, since I don't know everybody yet, just before you speak, just say your name so that we can get the comments down accurately in the notes. I appreciate it. And with that, jump in.
So when was the last time the tests are still being issued by the Metro Institute, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When was the last time those tests were updated?
What's your name?
Nathan Waters, Cummings Termite and Pest Control.
When's the last time they were updated? I honestly don't know. I wasn't included in the...
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if anybody had an answer to that. If anybody has an answer to that.
I have a partial answer. The partial answer is that within 6 months or so before the commission was disbanded,
I start with pest control.
correct, I'm sorry. I volunteered and agreed to participate in a group that would look at the test questions, the test answers, make sure the questions were appropriate, make sure the answers were anchored in the questions. And that group included Dr. Mike Pfeiffer, it included Bob Hartley, it included Owen, it included Dave Byrne, it included a number of people who certainly should and did know what was involved in that process. We did that, we submitted it to the commission, and I can't give you an exact month of the year, but it was within a few months before they disbanded. And they thanked us for our work and immediately went to work changing all the questions and answers through their staff. So I have no idea when those were actually implemented.
I guess my point is that I would like to see the testing updated, and I would like to see more applicable questions on the exam. I remember when I went to take my applicator's exam and my qualifying party exam, I could tell that these questions are far outdated and far removed from a lot of real-life application. Not to mention, I think we've all heard the issue of the forward drafts in the exams are a little bit sketchy at best. So what we're looking at, So
And as far as the qualifying party is concerned, I think that exam needs to be treated as a completely separate entity from the applicators. And the qualifying party exam should be something that you have to achieve, not just an obligation to take, and you get it right, your goal. So I'm being pretty vague here, but I want the standards to achieving a qualifying party license very, very high, because that should be something that you're very proud to hold. Right now, you have a 3,000-hour structure per category that is signed off on another qualifying party that likely is not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not followed up on by governing body. So if it's signed off that you have 3,000 hours, all right, let's let the individual take the exam. He goes in there, good to go. Now you're in industry, you can run a pest control company. So the barrier to entry needs to be higher. I've used that term before. I even think I used it last town hall. I may have used it last town hall. And I know that there's some other ideas floating around out there as far as what's required concerning experience. And that, in all honesty, I'm still tossing that around in my head. I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer for that. But I do know that qualifying party applicants need to be held accountable. We need to take a look at these individuals and say, yes, this is somebody we want running a company in the industry. Perhaps there needs to be maybe a business and finance section on that. That's another thing that I've noticed in the industry is that a lot of operators understand cash flow, but they don't understand the P&L or a balance sheet. And that's an issue, because we've got guys out on the road that can make just as much or if not more working for me that are running their own show, and they're beating the price up so bad that, I've got, customers say, well, you're almost twice as expensive as this guy, and that puts me in a corner. I'm not going to drop my price for anything because I know what the value is, and I built a good business on that. But we could all have a heck of a lot more, and everybody could be achieving greater success if we understand the true value of what we're doing.
I got a question. I'm sorry. I'm Jason from Fletcher's Termite Control. Jason Fletcher. What is the differences between qualifying party test and the applicator's test? What are the differences?
I can only tell you that I know the one is harder than the other.
Well, from what I looked at, see, I took the old test before they renewed it and made it ridiculously huge and big. So when I took the test, a lot of the questions, a lot of the stuff was almost identical to the applicator's exams. So I guess my question is what good is a QP if you're an applicator, or why do you need 3,000 hours if you're an applicator taking the same exact test as a QP? Does that make you any better?
No, it's just, that was my point, is that it's, when I the same thing.
Well, I understand what your point is. Basically, you're talking about something that, every business should be allowed to succeed or fail.
Correct.
Okay, and that goes for any normal average coffee shop to pest control industry. Honestly, if you can't keep your checks and balances, then obviously you're going to fail, no doubt. My thing is what is a QP good for? Why do we need it? If our applicators are taking the exact same test when they become applicators, aside from maybe a few little extra things, what's the need for a QP?
I guess I can give you a perspective of there needs to be a responsible person, and I think part of it is that this helps to maintain some level of consistency, and if you have a company and you got 20 applicators and they're all just out there doing their own thing, we're chasing 20 people, but if we've got a company that's got one QP and he's got 20 applicators, we're going to go to that QP, and he's going to be responsible for that. So I think it allows a level of consistency. Otherwise I think we're going to charge a whole lot more and get a whole lot more inspectors.
Well, basically, I guess, you made a comment about the responsible person. As an applicator, obviously, you're going to take the test and you're going to take the time to study for it. Wouldn't that make the applicator a responsible person as well?
No, because there's managers and there's technicians.
I mean, they're responsible to a point, but there needs to be added responsibility in the qualifying party. I mean, everyone's responsible to a degree, but who are they going to go to have everything enforced?
Well, ultimately, it's the person advocating that's going to have
part of
the
it.
problem.
Yeah.
There is a problem.
There has to be QP stuff. You can call it whatever you want, but I think his point was the test may need to be looked at, if it does, and you the scorpion test. And you want to prove that to where there's value in the exam, that actually makes it what it needs to be.
Well, I agree with it. I agree with it. It definitely needs to, before you guys do anything with legislation, I think you guys ought to really look at that portion of it, as far as what is an actual QP testing good for. Because basically the applicator's taking the exact same test, but the only difference is you need 3,000 hours in QP. In a category.
Henry with right. Henry Schneiker with International Accommodations. Every company, again, whether it's a coffee shop or whether it's a car dealership or anything else, has a responsible party. Like it or not, law requires that every business has a responsible party. The responsible party takes care of the business, right? In pest control, you've got someone who has an applicator's license. That person has gone and taken the test, knows how to apply chemicals, mix chemicals, take care of spills, wear the safety equipment, store the chemicals, do all those fine things. Okay? But the applicator, unless he's the business owner, has no responsibility for checks, no authority to spend money, no authority to do anything as far as running that business goes. The only possible thing he can do is go out there and apply chemicals and do it according to the license that he was given. So I see absolutely no purpose in having a QP. Certainly a coffee shop is not required to have a qualified person by statute. A car dealership is not required to have it by statute. So why does a pest control?
You're not in the industry, right?
I use the industry, and if the laws were changed, I might well be in the industry.
I can't remember the last time a coffee shop was applying chemicals, and I can't remember the last time a car dealership was applying chemicals. I mean, every day they clean. This is every day of the month. You guys, I'm telling you right now, you guys are fighting a losing battle because you need to have a responsible party to train the remaining staff.
But the license shows that they have been trained.
Well, anyway, I think where we need to go with discussion is 3,000 hours. Do you guys agree with that? Okay, let's talk about what it needs to be to make the QP.
Let's answer this gentleman's question here, and then I'd like to say something again.
Steve from BNAS, take a comparable industry instead of something that don't compare. Pool cleaning services. They carry a lot of very, very costly chemicals. And in fact, the structural pest agencies have in the past want to absorb them in and regulate them. So what's your opinion of that?
You want like the pool industry? Is that what you want?
No, the pool industry. I'm saying taking a comparable thing that does not have a QP, that does not have anything other than a business owner, and the business owner is responsible for training his people, which are not even regulated as much as ours are. They're just taught by the business owner to go out and do things the way he wants it done. That's old style pest control. We used to have that done. And that's the way it was always run up until the 70s, and they started putting regulations on. And a lot of the regulations I agree with, they're fine. But he was trying to, throw other things out. But let's talk about it comparatively.
Well, yeah. So do you want to be run like the pool industry? We can beat all our prices down. We can all be a bunch of one-man shows, and then that's the way it will function. Everybody can make a living, and nobody's really held accountable.
I don't think we want to go back. I think we want to go forward. So.
Okay. Well, and I'm Jim O'Keefe. I've been in this business for 35 years. And I know when there was no licensing, my father was on the original group to have licensing and make us do. But I think he's getting to the point. You've got industry here, it's like pools. There's no regulation. We are licensed, regulated. We have to get so many credit hours every year. So why do we need so many different things for this guy applying the chemical knows you don't spill the chemical on the ground, knows all the regulations on how to handle it, just like a qualifying party. My thing is talking about the hours. It's like somebody like me, I'm not a sole person. If I want to get into real, like weed control, how do I get 3,000 hours? And the average person can go into any Home Depot and buy practically everything we use, and there's no training at all. And I don't say we need to go backwards on the training, but I think we have to look into how many hours we're requiring people to do, and why we have all these different layers of people, and the guy at the bottom has to know how to apply chemicals just like the guy overseeing it.
Yeah, we have a business owner, a business
Yeah.
licensee, we have the qualifying party, and then we have the licensed applicator. If there's, you know, a qualifying party in a lot of ways is just an extra layer. You
Well,
can make it a combined thing with the business
business
licensee.
licensee that knows absolutely nothing about construction testing. And
Just an entrepreneur, wants a business.
exactly, so.
But that's the point of the applicator. The applicator is trained, the applicator is licensed, the applicator knows how to apply the chemicals, take care of them, store them, and do everything else.
You know what, can I tell a story real quick here? Can I tell a story real quick? All right. There's a difference between the responsibility, character-wise, of a qualifying party and an applicant, okay? Now, I am absolutely, by no means, degrading an applicator, because when I started, I had an applicator's license, okay? When I went in to get my applicator's license, and I was a new business owner working under a separate qualifying party from the previous owner, I'm sitting just like we are today at the Metro Institute, right next to an individual. He turns to me and he says, what are you doing here? You know, just a friendly conversation. Oh, I'm going to get my applicator's license. I just purchased a pest control company. I'm taking the steps. And he says, oh yeah? And without missing a beat, he says, yeah. He says, you know, I'm getting my applicator's license now too, because I was working for a guy, but I was doing side jobs and he fired me. So I'm working for this other guy now, and I'm coming in here finally to get my applicator's license, and I do a couple jobs on the side now, but it's not really a big deal. I said, yeah, you know, I'm just listening to this, and he says, so you're going to get your qualifying party and everything? I said, well, yeah, eventually I will. And he says, so you have your own business? I said, yeah. And he says, are you hiring? And I'm like, this is the first guy I saw in the industry. This guy, okay? These people are not, you cannot tell me that there is no difference between the responsibility of a qualifying party and the responsibility of an applicator. There is a massive, massive difference. And in comprehension, if you have a test, an exam that is geared specifically toward a qualifying party, and a test that is geared specifically toward an applicator, you will see that there are people that are cut out to manage these people. That's why there's managers, there's people underneath managers, and there's more managers. That's why the system works the way it is. But if the manager doesn't have any responsibility or any more knowledge than what these guys have, because I mean, let's face it, pest control can be as complicated as we want to make it. I mean, there are a lot of rules and regulations. There are a barrage of active ingredients out there. You know, my applicators do not know how every active ingredient functions. They don't know that. But me as a qualifying party, I should have to know that. If I'm going to train these guys, so I'm going to rely on the Metro Institute to train these guys, and then, all right, go on out, you guys, and then they show up at some meeting, sign off on some hours, and they're still as good as the day they took the test. Didn't happen.
No.
Not happening.
Maybe we should back up just a minute and kind of with a show of hands, why don't you tell us who wants the qualifying party to stay in place?
Can I say something?
There's an advantage. I'm
going to kind of go through some more.
I'm in between
questions.
because the qualifying party is basically qualifying party. Okay, it's kind of like if you're in a hospital and you have a nurse. Okay, your nurse is not going to have 23 patients. Okay, there's got to be, if you're going to have a qualifying party set, it's got to have a set number of applicators that is under that qualifying party. Now, that's what I believe. That's just my opinion. If you're going to have 175 employees, you can't have one QP. I think that's ridiculous. If you want to keep the QP, let's just make it realistic. You know, if you have 175 employees, let's have 20 QPs.
Courtney, I don't think it's fair to ask these exact questions so soon like that, because I've never read Title III. And until they read Title III and what the Act does, you're talking about efficiency here, you want to look at Title III and the responsible party and what they do there. And then maybe they can make a decision once it's informed, not let, once it's informed.
I think we're just,
Let's look at both sides,
but we're just speaking in general.
Yeah.
Do we want the QP? I mean, we're not saying it needs to be just like the department ad. We're not saying it has to be exactly like it is now. That's just kind of the feedback we're trying to solicit.
Give me an example.
one thing that the task force asked for, because the ag guys don't understand qualifying party, you don't understand, whatever they do, what is it called? Yeah, so they're going to provide, the staff's going to provide kind of a side-by-side of what's what and how they overlap and how they don't. So that would be a good thing that if you guys can make the next task force to get informed, you know, that's a good thing.
Okay, maybe just a couple more general questions and then we'll go back out. So if the QP should stay in place, this 3,000 hours work, should it be, this 3,000 hours work, yes, sir?
At this point, I'd say no, just because it may be probably.
They're made for
Is
certain
that kind of
categories. I think it's made for certain categories.
You're generalizing the qualifying party. There's how many different categories in our industry, and some of them are simple categories like wheat. Some of them are very complex, like fumigation. And so that to say 3,000 hours of experience applies for any one of those fields is antiquated, or just so general that it would not apply. So that, I mean, to tell you my story, I never had one day of pest control experience when I got my qualifying party. I have a PhD in entomology, and they took that as experience. So there's other ways that you can get it other than spending 3,000 hours.
Well, and that's what we're kind of trying to get at. Is 3,000 hours kind of hard and fast rules? Is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate?
It's designed to keep people out. That's the bottom line is it's designed to keep people out. And honestly,
do you think it's designed to keep people out, or do you think the part that's designed to keep the people out is that it requires the signature of somebody verified?
Well, it does. It requires basically, you know, when I got my 3,000 hours, I had to ask the employer, you know, how embarrassing that is.
And how often, how soon were you fired?
Basically, I was fired the day I got my license.
Right.
The day I got my license, I hadn't even made a penny. Bottom line is, you know, it's a conflict of interest between other companies. And honestly, you can't get a license, a qualifying party's license, and then keep a job with the intent, hey, I'm going to start my own business someday.
So the part that I think is broken is that it requires a signature of somebody to verify it. And the only way that you can get that is to go to your current person and say, will you please verify this? I'm going to be qualified party. Because lots of times they take that as that you're starting a new company, you're going to take away all of my customers that you're familiar with, which is common, you know, and you're going to start your own business. And so there has to be some protection for the current person and their clients, and or some other way of providing whatever hoop you say is in place to be qualified to make you good. It has to be. You have to have some way independent of your prior employer approving.
You sort of kind of have it now, because when you renew your license every year, you're saying these people are working for my company. There's your verification.
But now they've gotten rid of all the verification for the different categories. It's just 6 hours, and it doesn't matter what it's in. It doesn't prove that you have experience in weeds. It doesn't prove that you have experience in fumigation.
I think that's a different topic of discussion, which I think is important. But I think if we're talking about qualifying party, you know, the verification for 3,000 hours may not be. I mean, what is the solution for that?
There has to be, you know, in business structure, there has to be some kind of responsible party, whatever you want to call it, for whatever industry. But we're combining with agriculture. They have their own set of requirements. We have our own set of requirements. And, you know, it's all to make what is a responsible person. For whatever thing.
We heard. Okay.
I've been in this industry for over 50 years. I hold a qualifying party license 173. I hold the number one certification for the state of Arizona. Now listen, when you see, when I started out, I worked for a company for 7 years. Before I even took the state exam, I went and took a course with the entomology department at the University of Arizona. That gave me a heads up on how to take tests and what to look for on the state exam. And they went over everything with it. The reason why the state agency came into existence was the fact that you had a lot of fly-the-nights that come in here during the wintertime. Tell people they could take care of their termites. Come summertime, they were gone back to the next started, and they met twice a year. The only time you could take the exam was during that period of time. Because that's the only time they met, and they met in Phoenix, so you had to go to Phoenix to take the exam. Now, we see people that if it's incidental to their weed control license, when they do yard work, they can go ahead and do anything that they want. So now, why is it that every year I get into a crying jag when I have to take the 6 hours of continuous education because it's so boring to me that I sit there and cry at the computer as I read everything that I've went over for the last 50 years. And yet, I understand where these guys are coming from. My son's going to end up taking over my company, and he's worked since he was a teenager with it. But for the last 6 years, he's worked as the manager of the company. And so he's well qualified. He's very intelligent, hard-working individual. But I was trained under an individual that owned State Chemical Company. His word was as good as his handshake. And if he said that he was going to do something, he did it, whether it cost him money or not. And that's the way I've always operated my business. I've seen companies that come into this industry that were out strictly to make money. They didn't care how they treated their customers or anything else. So it's important that people have a background in accounting and how to keep from having lawsuits and complaints against them. I've never had a consumer complaint in the 26 years I've been in business. And that means that I look after my customers. So, you know, you're going to have to come up with some type of background. I see you kicked out the background check on criminal investigations. And yet I was born and raised here, and every year I have to prove that I am a citizen of this country.
Yeah.
And, so a lot of this should go by the wayside.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Kim Van
We heard the comparison to the school industry, and there are some validities in that comparison. However, there's a more valid comparison that exists today under the regulation of the Department of Agriculture, and that's landscaping. Landscapers do an awful lot of things that are very similar to us, including plumbing, pesticides. They have a lot of the same duties. How do we handle landscaping from a regulatory point of view? What's required?
It depends on the business's perspective, to be honest with you. Because the law says if it's incidental to their work, you know, they can do it if it's under 8 gallons, under 25 pounds, whatever. If there's an exemption saying they don't have to be licensed, but if the company wants to operate, you know, I guess they think that that's a potential concern, they get somebody licensed. And part of it, I just throw out our 2 bits on that is, that was always a concern that was raised to us, these landscape firms. But they haven't even come forward and tried to become licensed, because I truly believe that a lot of them would qualify and they could get licensed right now, they just aren't coming forward.
Let me use a specific personal example. I grew up in a small town in northern Arizona, right down the street from Richard. Richard and I have been friends since we were elementary. Richard owns arguably one of the largest landscaping companies in southwest United States. He does have licenses. He does have certified applicants. Who's the qualifying authority?
If he's got a business license, he's got to have a qualifying authority.
So if they operate under our law in that aspect?
If they are, I'm guessing if they are entering into contracts, I can't really answer the question. If they're entering into contracts where part of it requires that they do weed control, then they would most likely fall under our requirements, unless they come on try to say they're exempt because it will be incidental and all the stuff that I mentioned earlier.
Are there problems in the regulation of their industry as it applies to pesticide application?
We get issues with those folks as well.
And what do we do?
Well, we go, well,
That'll be a big deal.
we might issue a cease and desist, we might issue administrative warning, you know, that's the gamut of things that we may do.
For one of the issues that is just so many. I mean, is that an issue here in the industry? There's a lot, I mean, and let's talk about weed control. Are there a lot of, too many people applying, you know, weed control products, and a whole slew of people applying pest control products? I mean, are there just, I mean, is it tough to manage?
I can tell you, we spend a great deal of time dealing with unlicensed businesses, yes. And does that mean that they're all doing it wrong? Not necessarily, but we get complaints from all of you saying, you know, this happened, or we come across things that, you know, shows that somebody's out doing unlicensed work. So.
I don't know. Maybe we can figure out how to make it smaller.
And even what you were commenting about the guy sitting next to you at the meeting, doesn't matter if you have 47 or you truly don't. I mean, anybody working in, no truly here, but I'm just saying, any company, well trained, you've probably got the guy working on the side. I remember I used to do mobile home parks. There's the old guy who's out there doing pest control because he lives in the park. You know, there's all the laws in the world are not going to change people's action.
That's true, but the comment that was made would suggest that simply a licensed applicator is qualified to run a business. So
yeah, but I mean, if you say you're an applicator, or and you decide to run your own business, okay. If you know how to handle chemicals, put out chemicals, and do all that stuff, then I'd say get yourself some business courses so you know how to run the business and make a profit. I mean, if you've been trained on how to apply chemicals, handle chemicals safely, every requirement, why do you really need an extra level?
Well,
you know, that's my big thing.
Maybe you
It's
want
the
to
same
wait.
test. That's basically what I was trying
Okay,
to
so
say.
you don't want to
Same
wait
test.
then. You could make the applicator's exam insanely hard, okay, and make it so we really can't get
But
anybody.
why do you have to do that?
Hold on. Or we can, you know, you can say the business license then now costs you 10 grand. So.
But I mean, what's the money got to do it? I mean,
The money creates
used to be
hold on.
state.
The money creates a barrier to entry. If you don't have any skin in the game, there's no reason for you to do a good job.
Yeah.
There's no reason for you to make sure your prices are where they should be.
That's
Yeah,
morals and
but that's-
ethics. You cannot regulate
Yeah.
morals and
Well,
I
ethics.
can say anything on that.
Yeah, but you know, you take what you're talking about. I mean, if you're trained in doing the chemical and stuff, you're going to make it in the business or not, depending on your business skills. I mean, I hate to tell you guys, of all the chemical out there, we probably only handle 17%, 15%. The majority of the people who are applying chemicals are your homeowners, and none of them are trained.
And they haven't been hurt either.
Yeah.
Show me a case.
Well, there has been.
So, okay, here's the question. If we do a fly-by party, will we have more fly-by-nighters out there?
But
Of course we will.
but
So
you
do we
have
want
to have
Do we
somebody,
have,
maybe some.
will we have any less? If we do
I
that?
think so.
I don't think so.
I don't have any data, but
You know
I
what?
think because of the fly-by party.
I beg to differ with you, man, because there's companies out there, I'm not gonna sit there. and
There's always
but
going to be those
they apply
guys. But
chemicals.
would that number increase if we said, you know what? Now the state does not require a qualifying party. Just get your applicator license, go start your business.
You show me a number.
You
If
still
you
have to
can
know
prove
how
me
to
a
do
number.
it. You've got the inspectors coming and checking you. I mean, I've been in business, I got twice a year they come and, you know, what is there for me to do different?
Well, why don't we ask the regulator, is there a help to have someone, we don't have to call it qualifying party, but someone that is on the line for the business? I mean, if you have just only applicators, how are you as a regulator supposed to go after them? I mean, that's what I want to.
Well, if you're, say you're a
That
company
needed.
like Truly or some big company, your university, you have a lot of people like that. Okay? You have to have some guy that's responsible there. And that's how the law's already been set up. If you screw up as an applicator, they're going after you and the guy who's supervising you.
Qualifying party currently, but
Yeah,
if we do it.
well, why
we need to
does
do
he
it.
need,
Well, let me ask you guys one question. Here's a man that works for agriculture. What qualifies a farmer to apply pesticides on his crop that you and I eat? You know, you give him a test, you give him a qualifying license, you go out there and check him what he's applying to the crops.
It depends. In agriculture, if it's a restricted use product, they have to be certified and licensed, and that means they've taken an exam to show that they understand
What restricted use pesticides even remain on the market?
But the other side that's driving this as well is the food safety side of things. So I would say the vast majority of farmers are certified, just because, you know, with everybody's so concerned with food safety now, ensuring that they're doing things right, it's another thing that they can show that how proactive they're being in that. But
Gentlemen, we're not stand up. Let's remember.
Let's take it a step back, maybe. If we're talking about how we have too many layers, why are we having a qualified applicator? Why don't we have just the qualifying party for the business? Because the qualifying applicator, that test is designed to have people be qualified to use restricted use pesticides as defined by the EPA. How many of us in this room have ever used one? If it wasn't, in the last 10 years. None of us have. So we have them jump through a hoop that is extremely useless from the EPA's point of view. So what we would have is a test for the qualifying party, and you can hire people to work as long as you train them. Or you have a separate thing that, because there's no difference between your qualified applicator and the general public, because they're both using the same products, basically, different labels. But other than he's taken a test, which is proof that he has been to a class and learned some stuff. So maybe what we have is just a qualifying party, which has its own set of regulations, not necessarily 3,000 hours, depending on the category. But we can hire these people, because my people are all seasoned. I only employ people from March through June. And for lots of times it's useless to have them get certified. If I was certified, I'll see you next spring, I'd like to hire you again. Because they're not going to use anything other than aerosols and soapy water. For me.
Well, if they were the majority industry.
But I just want to street, I'm still regulated.
This qualifying party is such a volatile issue and such. And I have a lot of thoughts one way or the other, but the one thing I do got to say is I think the applicator license should be switched to certification. It's just a syntax type of thing. But I don't believe that we should deregulate so much, because I don't believe, frankly, the legislature is going to look at it very confidently. Second of all, we cannot hinder anybody to get into this industry, because that would be looked on very poorly, not only by the legislature, but a lot of other groups that look after that kind of thing. And FIB is one, very powerful level. Second thing is, if there's a certification exam for an applicator in 90 days, I like the idea because it does hold them to a certain level of knowledge that they can safely read a label and they can safely apply a material. The qualifying party, in my opinion, whether it's a responsible party, as it says in Title III or whatever, needs to be somebody there so that the technicians are properly trained and equipped and doing the job safely. And if there's an error, the technician made a mistake, that's fine, that happens, that'll be dealt with. But if the technician does it 3 or 4 times doing the same thing, that means there's a problem with the company, somebody's running the company, and somebody needs to be held accountable for that. And this industry is a profession. It's not just a job. And we need to look at ourselves as professionals. I'm tired of people just calling me a buggy. After 32 years of trying to be professional about this industry, to hear people talk about less regulation and less qualifications to get into this industry worries me. Because I don't want a bunch of fly-by-nights. I was in someone's yard once when a pool guy let chlorine gas loose. And what did he do? He ran for the hills, killed every tree in that lady's backyard, and scared the hell out of me. Because I ran with him. I had a backpack on my back. I dropped it and I just ran. But he was just a guy working out a struggle. We just got to be sensible about this. And I'm all pro-regulation, but it cannot be prohibited. It's got to be so that we all have a fair chance to earn a living, to provide for our families. And 10,000 business license, oh, it sounds great because we already have it. But I don't, if one of my employees comes to me and wants to verify 3,000 hours, first thing
thing comes to my mind, who's going to steal my customer? But because of what the law says, I'm going to sign it because I'm obligated by the law. But that's my ethics.
You actually are obligated by law? You can say no.
It is to me.
Okay.
That's my ethics.
Correct.
Okay. So I just think everybody's got to just lower their tone and just think sensibly about what we're trying to do and the opportunities this industry has. You know, this industry has an opportunity now to make a difference for the next 20 years for its future. Regulation is regulation. Our law is a mess. Everybody knows it. There's certain things that really need to be quit. If I take a qualifying party license, I think there should be something that has to do with business, accounting, OSHA. There should be some of that in there if you plan to grow and be a larger company.
Are we talking about accountability?
Well,
whether it's
we
license
can't
or
legislate accountability. Okay. If somebody wants to be a technician, say, you know what, I can do better than my boss, so I'm going to start my business. He should have that right. But if he wants to be a businessman, there should be a way for him to go get an education so he can be a better businessman.
Accountability can be measured in a lot of different ways.
And accountability can be
By education, by testing, by experience, but there are a lot of different ways to do that.
You had your hand up for the one.
Thank you. I have a friend who was in the pool business for a lot of years, and there's a very well-known saying in the pool industry that anybody who has a pickup truck can start their own pool company. That saying does not exist in the pest control industry right now, and I don't want it to.
No, I don't.
What was your name? I'm sorry.
Leah from First Source. That's all I have to say.
I've been doing this 14 years. I have yet to have a qualified party ever trained me to do anything. Not once. Every time when I was actually trained, it was by an applicator. Anytime. I took the test on my own. Anytime I got trained to do pre-treats, it was by another applicator.
Come to work for me. I train my guys twice a month.
Aside from small business, you know, I work for Northwest. I work for Northwest. I work for SOS. You know, I work for quite a large company.
Okay.
But in any of those companies, I was never trained by the qualified party. Ever. Not once. Not once. And I guarantee you, if you actually take the number of actual applicators that are trained by the qualified parties, it's going to be a very low number. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any regulation. Obviously, there has to be. But I want it to be fair across the board for everybody.
What's your solution?
But fair is
Well,
fair.
if I had the answer to every single question everybody had, this meeting wouldn't be happening. But bottom
I don't
line
think
is,
fair is the proper term to use. The opportunity has to be there for everybody to have the chance to shoot at it. I get tired of the fair word.
well,
The opportunity needs to be there for all of us to have that opportunity. If we want to take the risk, there has to be risk.
I agree with you.
And-
I agree with you wholeheartedly. But you know what? If you're $1 million company and I'm only making $30,000 a year, and you get a $30,000 fine and I get a $30,000 fine, who's going out of business first? You or me? That's what I'm talking about. Fair. These laws need to be fair, and they need to be fair across the board.
I'm not saying Mr. Jim O'Keefe here has got 32 years in the business. He can comprehend and read a label just as well as anybody.
Sure.
Now, what if he can take and read a label and show the state he can read a label and furnish the insurance company with the state showing that he has a license and stuff, why shouldn't he get a weed control license? Do they have to go get 3,000 hours from somebody else?
I agree with it. I agree if you show confidence in any category, you should be able to run a business in it.
Or perhaps the categories then should be, some categories should be linked to others. So if you have, if you do have your B1, B2, B8, perhaps if you want to get into weed control, then maybe there should be a connection there that says, these are the same principles. You can take the exam, and then you can go ahead.
Sure. I agree with that. Bottom line, let's make
I'm not opposed to something like that, but you still have to have something in place.
Courtney, it's our turn to list. As far as Ken Frederick is here, his question, I worked for 2 corporations, and I had to sign non-compete clauses. And if I did go after anyone's business or accounts, there'd be an injunction on it. My employees had to sign competition clauses. I'm basically farm everything out now. I don't do the big work. It's working out because I look for trained people to do it. Now, I'd like to address Nathan's comment comments about Tom, Dick, and Harry competing, thousands of us. Tom, Dick, and Harry doesn't bother me. I'm competing with them now. What I'm locking horns with right now is AAA, and when SOS was doing the termite business at 10 cents a square foot, I could not get back into the pre-treatment market. We were driven out. Bad money drove out good money. The really good applicators were driven out, so SOS dropped its prices and a few other big companies. I compete with big companies. They go below or at cost. I couldn't make profit. It isn't little Joey and little Johnny running around out there. It is AAA, which I'm locking horns with. He dropped his rates $20. I specialize in Marana, Continental Ranch. I was 99 on a house. He dropped 79.
I don't see Target complaining about
Pushing
Walmart.
out. That's
so-
competition. I'm okay with the competition because I'm going to expand my license on it. I'm going to go in an area where AAA cannot go with my license. That is free market competition. But Tommy and Joey and all the little thousands, they don't bother me.
Well, that's fine.
It's the big ones dropping their rates below cost.
I'm not,
You know, we're not here to point fingers. I think we're here to look at,
I think we're getting off track.
constructively looking at how we can bring solutions to the problems with current regulations and licensing. And so, you know, I don't know, most people I saw raise their hand, which you say from somebody led or whatever, said they were in favor of the qualifying party. Let's talk about 3,000 hours. Okay, we don't like that. What do we like? Can we combine
Ryan,
education with a better test? You're cutting me off, Ryan?
I am.
Okay.
Ryan Horn, University of Pine Pest Control. I believe the qualifying party should be in place. Okay. I believe the test that is in place right now it's not good. Because all it is a regular applicator's test, with the exception, I think, of 25 more questions. But it's essentially the same questions. There's just more of them. I think for the qualifying party, the test should be a combination of a written exam like it is, and it should be, and I don't know how many people apply every year, but it should be a tactical test. Maybe you go out in the field with the inspector or whoever's doing it, you can show physically, in plain blue sight, how to drill a stem wall, how to make sure you're not coming back up on the other expansion joint inside the house, and go through those things. And maybe even have an oral part of the exam. So you can show, yes, whether it's been 100 hours or 3,000 hours, I know how to do this job. And then you get rid of the 3,000 hours.
So you get rid of the hours, you focus just on the exam.
Yeah. Because you can take the test. When I took my first test, there was no waiting period. Read the manual. I went in about 3 weeks after I started and passed.
I took my
For the pest control, yeah, and the termite control. Never even been out in the field in termite control, but I passed it. It didn't really mean anything. As an applicator, even though I have a license, I was not qualified to do that work. Okay. Now, whether the qualifying party in that company that I worked for, university, trained me or not.
And you may work for tomorrow.
Depends on what side of the fence you're on here, but the test just needs to be more in depth. It does. I don't think you need to have just say I've got 3,000 hours in this category.
Yeah. So this is good. We hadn't heard about the test in the last town hall.
I think also that we need, the qualifying party person really needs to do more continuing ed courses too. I mean, it's really nice that I only have to take 6 credits like my applicators do, but at the same time, I have a lot more responsibility. And I think as qualifying party is we need to stay up on, much more current on self-driven. So, I mean, there's new things coming out all the time, and as qualifying party, we really need to be more educated, and we need to have more, require more continuing.
And what we should
I'm Shelby Hawkins.
Shelby, does that need to be required of you, or is that something you would take upon yourself anyway?
Oh, I think that we should have it required, but I do it anyway because I get started. I love to learn. I love to read. I mean, I take a lot of them. I don't even report because it's like, this is so cool, you know. And I just like. I think it's really because we are in a different position than the outpatient. More needs to be required of us. And I agree with this gentleman as far as like, with it being the license holder or the qualifying party or the business license holder. Heidi and I were just talking about this morning. When I got my license in 1980, none of the people that were in that room with me have their licenses now. They're all out of the industry. And the reason why is none of them are in business anymore. There's a real, we need to have, when people say, well, I want to start my own business, I go, number one, you got to learn the numbers. You got to learn accounting. Because if you don't run a company by the numbers, you're going to be out of business. I've seen people where they go in, they get some customers, they start spraying, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, I owe $5,000 to the IRS, and they fold, and they still have to pay the IRS. And all these customers they accumulated are just out there. And it can be termite contracts, pest control, whatever. But the qualifying party really needs to have more business background.
Does that protect the public in any way?
Yes.
Any last questions on qualifying party, the hours, the tests? Questions, I mean, comments that have been said.
I like what you said. So I think possibly something to at least want to think about. Qualifying party, okay, maybe a mix of it as a practical exam, beefing up the current exam to where a better test knowledge that is required for someone as a qualifying party. And I think that's a great idea to require some more hours, maybe to, define some of those hours, because you're right, I mean, 6 hours, whatever you want, doesn't matter the category, I think there would be a higher standard there. That's all I was going to say.
When I took the qualifying party, it's broken into a whole bunch of different sections. It's not like the current one where you have what's almost choice. You had an essay section, you had a big section on slides where you had to identify what the insects were, and that was a completely different section. And so you had 5 or 6 different sections. You could fail one section, you have to retake that section over and over until you got it. But it was formatted completely different than it is now, which can be easily graded by a computer. Big deal. We're not really want to impress a computer. We want to impress our clients and our knowledge and have some. So I think having a practical or redoing the whole test with a different point of view is not.
The quick thought. I just wanted to, I don't know if we're going to go to the expanded category.
Yeah.
Because if the test is good, you take the core exam so you know the law, you know the rules, and that kind of thing. And if there's some business aspect to it, fine. I tell you, when I got my qualifying party, I didn't know how to read a computer. I had to learn. But as a businessman, that's what I decided to do. But the question I have is, why can't I now go in and take an exam to show that I can read the label of an herbicide, and I can ID what the weed is, and I can qualify for that now because I don't have 2,000 herbicides. I know turf and hormone was the same thing. And there should be a way for us to be able to not be hindered to expand our business. Maybe something like aquatic, which is very, very specialized.
Yeah.
Maybe you need additional training in that. Fumigation, I would agree with, because that's some nasty stuff.
Restricted use.
And maybe even some termite work to a point might need a little bit of work, because if you're down drilling through a slab, you don't know it's post tension, you hit that cable, you're in for a rude awakening. There's issues about post-construction termite work that if you don't know, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I saw a guy flood a basement once. It wasn't my company.
or fill in the ductwork.
Or statute of limitations is running out.
This is certain things, but there is some hindrance for us to be able to expand our licenses now, and I think everybody agrees that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and that was brought up at the task force.
I was going to say, thinking about.
Go ahead.
Comment on the other comment that was made about, like we need to require business, P&L reading and stuff like that. No other business has that requirement. Why should pest control be special in having statutory requirements for being able to do accounting functions when no other business out there has any requirement whatsoever in statute to be able to do such a thing. If nobody else, no other industry out there has similar requirements, I see no reason why the pest control industry in particular should have statutory requirements to do the same thing.
With the current format, the business licensee can be completely separate. That's qualifying party and pre-company. And so the business licensee really is more, in my mind, the person who would do all the running of the actual business, the profits, loss, the accounting, and everything else. While the person who is the qualifying party has more responsibility of taking care of all the employees that are taking care of training and everything else.
Well, and that really leads us into, should the responsibilities of the qualifying party change? Should they take on more responsibilities? Should they handle the record keeping? Should they,
I don't think so. I think that qualifying party, the way I see it right now, as long as that person can document that he's training his employees, that he's equipping his employees, and that the ongoing training is there, I think that's what a qualifying party does. As I sit next to the business owner over here, I don't think that he doesn't care if I know how to read a P&L or the financial statements or that as far as his business is concerned. Because if I go to him and say, hey, it looks like we need to shuffle some dollars here, his P&L, go against that, I'm looking like, it's my business. We've had this conversation.
It's only because I'm a dictator.
Right. And that's fun. Two-way personality. So that's the business owner who's going to say how to finance. So I don't think that as far as the qualifying party is concerned, we keep the name the same or whatever. The finances and running the financial aspects of the business, there shouldn't be any bearing at all.
There's another dynamic at work in our business that's a little bit unique, and that is we have so many businesses that are the 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 employee businesses, where the owner really is everything. However, the majority of the business that's done, when you look at it in terms of dollars and number of customers served, is done by a handful of companies that are national or regional companies with a lot of employees, sophisticated training programs, who have their own credentialing programs before they let people go out. And the dynamic is so different. It's like we're in two different industries, with the exception of the fact that we kill pests or control pests. And it makes it very, very difficult to have this conversation, but because you're not going to get the Rollins family to send somebody to Arizona every week to be the qualifying party. You're not going to get Terminex. You're not going to get Echo Lab to change their business model, which works not only in the United States but throughout the world, in order to do that. They'll accommodate whatever local regulations there are, but in the real world, it doesn't affect the way they do business. I think that credentialing, whether it's through licensure or whether it's through a business's own responsibility, really have to do with the cream rising to the top. And if you do things well, if you do things consistently, and if you do the right things well and consistently, you're going to be successful. And if you don't, you're probably not.
So this is a regulatory issue. And I wrote in her email that I think a lot of the regulation has to happen in front end. As far as the cream rising to the top, once you're in the industry, then it's a sink or swim deal. Because at that point you have to separate yourself from your competition. But I am a strong advocate of the bulk of the regulation happens up front in order to make sure that we get the best of the American workforce in the industry. That's ultimately what I want. And that's why I'm pretty disheartened to hear that it sounds like the background checks are just going to be the responsibility of the company. So that means there's going to be a lot of companies out there doing no background checks. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that's sad to me. And so, and when as far as the business licensee and the qualifying party license. I mean, it's two separate licenses. Oftentimes, like you say, it's one and the same because there are a lot of 1 to 5, 10, 15, 20 man shows out there, and that guy is kind of the be all end all. But in order for the industry to thrive and achieve the value on a per application basis, we have to have individuals in the industry that understand the numbers. And that is also a large concern to me. Is that and I know you're running the camera down there all feisty about Tom, Dick, and Harry, but that's not my point. My point is that the large companies were the ones that were lowballing.
Yes.
So I don't know where your argument was coming in. I mean, I'm concerned about everybody around the board that is not pricing where I believe the value should be. And the only way to combat that is through education, proper regulation, and a high barrier to entry.
Wrong.
No, it's not wrong. Because if you're going to
It's morals and ethics.
This is not morals and ethics. This is a governing body issue. It has nothing to do with morals and ethics.
This is about profit and greed and get that money and I know enough QPs that have quit corporations because they were asked to water down, they were asked to do things they didn't want to put their licenses on the line for.
Okay, I think we're kind of getting off subject. Let's stay on the QP. Let's stay away from where our prices should be. Let's stay on the.
I think as far as it currently sits with the business licensee and qualifying party, and maybe I don't know all there is to know, but I don't see much issue with that right there, how it's set up. I think it's been working well, as far as I know, and maybe Jack has a better idea based on his staff and what they're doing. I mean, are they able to enforce the current regulations with the current set of business license and qualifying party application?
There are things that are problematic. What would you like to know?
Oh, I guess I just want to know what are the issues with how it's, as far as from a regulatory perspective, with how it's set up now, as far as you've been able to do your job.
I can tell you things that are problematic. Right now we have 3,000 hours. That's problematic. For example, the business owner doesn't want to give the experience. So then what we do is we go to the individual and say, what can you tell us about your experience? And it basically becomes that person's word then. The business owner has no say in it. That's often when we talk to business owner. You sure you don't want to weigh in on this? Because if not, your employee's going to be able to draw his own card here. That's a problem.
I guess I'm more asking as far as the duties or responsibilities of a business licensing qualifying party. With how those are set out now, are there issues with being able to regulate what they're supposed to be doing?
You mean as the agency being able to, if something goes wrong, the agency able to target the rest of the person?
I think the one thing that seems different in this is that in the agriculture industry, and somebody made the comment about, but if you've got employees, maybe it's back here and they screw up, somebody screws up, we go over and we slap that employee's hand and say don't do that again, and then the employee does it again, or another employee does it again, slap that employee's hand. Eventually it comes back to that company. And in agriculture, there's a joint responsibility. There's no go-free card.
Don't we have that though? Is it a responsibility?
What happens though is I know there've been a lot of cases where as long as you can show that the person's been whatever equipped and trained, he's out. Well, I fired him. So now it's all of a sudden like you go free because you fired him. And in agriculture, that's not the way it goes. I don't care if you fired him; you were still responsible as a business owner or the qualifying party. You're gonna pay the piper. So that's one of the things that, in my mind, we need to somehow do that so we can't just either the qualifying party says, oh, it's a business license, or the business license, oh, it's a qualifying party, or the applicator says, there needs to be, we need to all come together and hold hands and pretend we're in love.
Jack,
Yeah.
It's our turn. I'm going to bring a case February 15th that is so egregious, so insulting to the industry, that is probably still going on to this day. Hopefully the consumer will show up with her attorney and talk to this task force about what happened to her. lot of people looking the other way at certain things going on in the structural pest control inspection and termite industry. I'm hoping I can get her there. She'll probably need 5 minutes. I want to do a PowerPoint to show you how bad. When you say, oh, it stopped, no, there's a dirty little secret in this.
Let's stop. What are you talking about?
That, oh, once you find someone, you fire them, you fine them, or there's a repeat. It doesn't get repeated. It is when you catch someone, they've probably done this 50 times before when you finally catch up to someone. And that's what this case is going to show you. There's actually 3, but this particular gal is the worst I've ever seen. It continued for too many years. Nobody stepped in. There was no, I can't tell you because I want it to be such a total surprise. So, no, the consumer did not get protected at all by the industry on so many different levels. It resulted in a major lawsuit.
So how does that apply to qualifying parties?
Because he says that, oh, once we find someone, we're going to find them, and if we see repetition, you do not see repetition. They just get smarter and hide it more. And there may be several industries involved, and I'm going to show all the industries outside of the pest control industry that were involved in this particular case. There's actually 3, but this is, like I said, the worst I've ever seen. There were so many looking the other way. I just call it an incestual relationship between real estate and the termite industry, and I'll prove it, and I'll show
Can you have some ideas to help our industry going forward? Can you have some ideas?
Yes, that's what it's there for that task force.
No,
To listen to what this woman has
qualifying
to
party,
say.
or are we going to go on to the talks, or how do we want to?
We're good with qualifying party, right?
All right.
Move on to TARP. Something less controversial. TARP structure. The task force last month, earlier this month, spent a little bit of time on TARP structure. Should we continue the existing structure? Do we need to keep some sort of reporting system, but does it need to be tweaked? Is it a good reporting system? Is it a worthless reporting system? And again, last task force meeting, we spent most of the time on the qualifying party, just like we did here, but it would be good to start to get some feedback on that as well.
I think the TARP system is beneficial for actual termite work and product placed in the ground. I think that's great because I use it commonly, especially with general pest control customers that have had termite treatment done in their home before, and it wasn't by us, but they want to know who it was done by. That makes us look pretty good, gives them a lot of information. As far as a TARP submitted due to a WDIIR, I think that should be, that should go away. I don't think that's up.
I think, I didn't raise my hand. I've always been an advocate that TARP should go away, period. I think it's not a good reporting system. However, I also am understanding that, one component of all this discussion we have is the legislature. And if you get rid of the TARP and it's seen as a consumer protection, whether it is or not, but it appears to be that way, you try to get rid of it, it's going to be an argument. So I think if the TARP stays, it has to change. I agree. WDIR is throw them out. We don't. All it's for is to be able to tell a consumer that the house was treated 5 times for termites by 5 different companies in the last 10 years. And that way that buyer can make a decision if they want to buy that house or not. But maybe it should just be the name of the company who treated it, the material that was applied, and the date. But a WDIR to be TARP is ridiculous. No chemical feasible.
He was up first.
I don't have any problem per se with TARP, but for $8 now, I'm a strictly termite company. Okay, I don't do any pest control because I can't get $2,000. All right, so that's a problem. So I'm stuck here paying TARPs $8. For a small business, it's a huge burden on me, and it doesn't do the public any justice at all. Yes, you can say, a customer says, "Can you tell me who treated it last time?" Maybe, because I don't know if that other company TARPed it or not. It's an up in the air thing. I can look it up, great. But the real problem is with the TARP system today, the $8, it goes to funding the entire agency, and partially the entire agency. When I believe it should be set up just to basically maintain a database. Which generally, in my case, you know, today's technology, you can pretty much get a database for 60, 70 bucks, you know, that will maintain everything. But yeah, you have an IT guy that pay him $30,000 a year, but even then, the numbers just don't add up. You have tarps, and if people want to keep them so bad, let's make it what it was made for. Don't sit there and try to gouge termite companies and leave it at that, you know. You can't pay $8, and that's a lot of money per year. I mean, you got to figure 2000, 2001, but when the companies weren't doing really good, you know, there was a lot more revenue being made as far as tarp goes. You know, I've only seen the ones from like last year, the year prior to that, $1.5 million. You know, that's a lot of money to maintain a database.
I just want to clarify that I've heard that put it right, or I've seen that put it right. This is only intended for that. That's completely wrong. The law says it's for the chapter, which is the entire regulation of the structural pest control industry. I just want people to understand that it's not for maintenance of the database.
I guess my question is you know,
and I'm not trying to say it's right or wrong. I just want people to understand.
But I agree. But you know, none of us are lawyers in here, and none of us are judges to sit there and tell you you're wrong. You know, how did you come up with that? Did somebody tell you? I mean, what I'm asking is how do you know that's, you know, basically, because the way I read it, the way I look at it, the way I understand it.
It says chapter. Look at it carefully. It says chapter. So.
And initially,
it says section.
It was to hire more inspectors and a database. It was not to be used as a general company for the agency. That changed in 96 or 97, something like that. The commission changed the law. Okay. That's how it got to be where it is today.
It's working.
Yeah. Like every agency, they see the money and they're going to take it. Sure. It's evolved.
You're too kind.
Well, I just want to throw in, yes.
State your name.
Joe Sig with the Arizona Farm Bureau. I'm the ag regulated community. And I'm going to disagree with Jack. So please don't record this. The gentleman is still correct because a narrow part of the industry is paying a disproportionate share of OPM, even though that's what it says in the chapter. I just, with respect to his point, I think his point is still valid.
Amen.
I have a comment if I may, and that's at the core of a part of this, that if you think that the TARP as a consumer protection issue is a point, wait till you consider the TARP as the ability to fund the regulatory function, which with not only with the Department of Agriculture, but also with the legislature, will be an issue. And we so often get into a position where something happens, and in this case we'll just say a regulation, and that regulation has financial consequences. Maybe it makes some money, maybe it costs money, maybe both. But it becomes relied upon, and it becomes its own justification. And I think that's a very, very difficult and contentious issue at this point in time, because, and partially based upon what this young man over here said, that maybe it's not loaded right, maybe it's not apportioned right, or maybe just the fact that that fee, which has been $8 and $7 and different numbers over time, maybe just the fact that that fee is not necessarily justified, or maybe is justified, by the action that is taken, that is financed by it, or the service that it gives to the public in relation to the total amount of money that's being collected.
I use the system every single week. I use my smartphone, I log into OPM's website, and I pull up information. I think it's especially valuable right now where we have so many bank-owned properties and there's no history on the property. On the other hand, every time I write a check to OPM for my tarps I'm filing, I want to pull my hair out because I'm sending them thousands of dollars a year. Whereas somebody that does weed control or just pest control isn't sending in any money. So I like having access to the information on termite treatment. I think you're right. I don't think we need the TARF inspections, but a record of the treatments has been beneficial to me. I don't know how many times. And when I go to a bank-owned property and it looks to me like it was treated 6 months ago, I mean, I could be like, oh, screw it. I'll just say it's got termites. Nobody will ever know. But my conscience says, no, check the website. There's the information. It was treated 6 months ago. But yeah, I don't like all the money I'm spending in. I'm a little business, and I'd love to put that money in my pocket.
Absolutely.
So as far as what Ken said, if the legislature looks at it as a consumer protection deal, it's probably difficult to get rid of, especially if you look at the other side of, a funding mechanism. But I think, it's probably fine enough to keep it, and there maybe want to keep it. So, what if we were able to get in lowering it to $1, locking it to $1 or something like that, to where it's more affordable, to where it's still a benefit. And then, of course, I think the next topic is fees. At that point, we're probably going to have to come up with a way to continue to fund the agency and broaden that over the whole group instead of, okay, terminal guys, you got to pay this percent, which is way higher for the overall picture.
I think we should just leave it on the back of the pest control guys for a while.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Guys,
every federal pest control application. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I don't do towers, I don't do termite detectors, and I don't miss them. But I used to. But there's something I've learned from other industries. When you go to have your car repaired, you see all the extra fees they charge you. Disposal fees. Maybe that's what we've got to do, is whenever you do a customer, there's this $8 charge, just like the auto industry does. You go there, there's a disposal fee, there's a rag fee.
Well, obviously, termite work, it's itemized. They know they're paying the tax.
Maybe we can become a utility.
Yeah.
Maybe we look at telephone bill receipts.
Well, see, I don't charge my customers a tax. I pay out of my pocket with money they pay me. But, there are a lot of companies that do, like Ken said, itemize it. They say you your $8 fee for car. But I don't think.
And I call it a tax because that's what it is.
It is.
And I actually do it as a protest.
Yeah.
I tell my consumers, you're paying $8 to the state. Do you really feel like it's worth it? Most of them say I'm here.
2 comments. One is that the fee's $8 only if you pay it through the website. If you pay by check, it's $16. And so it's considerably higher for some part of the population. The other thing is you could always change the fee to charge the person who accesses the database. So the users of that data are the ones who are actually paying for it instead of the people who are putting the data in. If you insist on having TARFs, which I don't believe are terribly useful most of the time, then charge the people who are actually accessing the information.
Like a real estate department.
Yeah, I think that was brought up at the task force as well.
I know that, I don't want to speak because I can't remember who told me something about the Real Estate Agency Association. I didn't. Said they use it a lot, and if you try to get rid of it, they'll fight us on.
Make them pay for it.
Make them pay for it.
Yeah. You make a user fee.
Make it like a user ID, you gotta be a member.
That is a good idea.
Absolutely, make the realtors pay for it. Better consumer protection if you have more data that's in there, the data in free, better protection for the consumer.
No, don't say that. That's the biggest risk with the TARP, in my opinion. Someday they're going to require us to TARP every chemical application. That'll be nice.
Tried that once. The paperwork was just way too much.
That was just termite treatments. That wasn't pest control.
Right.
All right, move on to fees in general. We kind of led into that a little bit. If in fact we should reduce the TARP fee, there's potential for other fees.
Well, I don't
To
believe
go
in
up
that.
and-
It's not just the TARP fee too, it's the late fees on top of that. Because a lot of times when you're doing a real estate transaction, you don't get paid for that until 30 days after. you know, you do the inspection. So then you're stuck in a $24 fee. I mean, you got the extra $8, great, but you know, if you're a small company, it's really hard. You know, it's a tough thing.
Suck it up.
I tried to, but you know.
So that could be fixed by having a longer time frame?
It can, you know. I mean, see what it was before. See, and this is, you know, it used to be $16. I can understand double. Actually, no, I can't understand double. I can't even understand triple.
I can understand triple, because if you don't file your TARs, then that database isn't correct, and it really hurts us that use it. So doggone it, suck it up, file them, pay it,
Sure.
and then, you know, when you get it in, you get the money in from the title company, then deposit it in the bank. I mean, yeah, cash flow is a difficult thing, but by golly, if you can't manage cash flow, it shouldn't be in business.
If the tar should disappear tomorrow, who would be harmed?
Really would. We would, because we use it a lot.
What, to check up on other companies?
No, Phyllis, you don't check up on other companies. I'd like to check up on you.
I'd just like to say, if it's all right. I was stunned. I sit on the PMAC, the Pest Management Advisory Committee. And at the last meeting, the Department of Ag gives us a flow chart of their budget every meeting on how much money's coming in, how much money is being spent. And the amount of money that Jack Peterson is using to run OPM today versus 2 years ago is quite a bit less. And it's 28%. It's amazing. So, can fees, I think the tar fees should go down.
48% right now.
It's already down to a buck or two.
Yeah.
But of the $1.7 million they're going to get this year, 1.3 and a half of it comes from tar fees. So if you're going to replace the fee, get rid of the tar, lower the fee, how are you going to replace that money? He needs money to run the agency. Because it's not going to come out of the general fund. Guaranteed this. It's never going to
We
happen.
can guarantee that.
Guarantee that won't happen.
Well,
So,
I think that's a state to figure out, honestly. It shouldn't come off our backs. It shouldn't come off the actual public that have to pay the tax.
Put my money
let me tell you what they do
in
in other states. You pay your license renewal fee based on how many licensed applicators or certified applicators you have working for you.
Okay.
So, I talked to a guy who owns a big company in Florida, pays $4,000 a year to renew his business license. But he's got 350 employees that are registered to his business license. And he has no problem doing it because he says, I tax the system more than you would because you're a 1 or 2 man operator. So the 1 or 2 man operators, they pay $250.
So you're saying keep the tar system, lower the tar system, lower the fee, but also make it so everybody has to pay according to how many employees they have. That way that it's shouldered by the entire industry, not just the termite.
That's the way I look at it. I'm sorry. What's your name?
I'm Heidi, I'm sorry.
You know, Jack, you suggested just exactly that as a potential or a possibility at the last task force. So I think we're already moving down that track. It's just where we're going to wind up. We're not sure yet. Or am I wrong today?
Are we talking about all fees or just a certain couple?
We're talking licensing fees.
Licensing.
Well, something like $50 per employee, and that's for the little guys, the 5 guys are only gonna pay $250.
Yeah. And that's,
But didn't you also suggest?
I think it's all in the mix. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it really, the task force hasn't addressed it yet. So this is kind of an opportunity to start the discussion on.
But didn't you also
Should they look at
suggest that
licensing?
there was the possibility or the potential for modifying the TAR fees if that was appropriate?
yeah, actually, I didn't say it. Somebody else said that, I don't remember.
I don't remember who said it either, but it was discussed.
Something, yeah, they talked about, because we reduced the outflow of money, there's money in the fund, and we have money sitting in the fund, the legislature always looks at it.
Now, Jack, it used to say in the rule that the director had the authority to adjust tar fees up or down based on cash flow. Is that still in rule?
It's in law. It's in law.
It should be in rule. If it's in law, it's in law. I didn't know if the authority was still there for the director to do that, or if it had to be another act of God.
I think it is in there. It's in the office.
I'm just curious, I don't know if anyone has this information, but if we were to look at member licensed applicators and look at, okay, we put the tar fee down to $1, let's just say, how much per applicator would it take as far as for a business? Do you have any idea about what that would be? Taking a look at those numbers?
There's over 7,000 licensed applications.
Yeah, I think it's something we probably have to.
The current numbers, if you go on as is in the budget and projection, Jack will end up the fiscal year next year with $750,000. So it's not, you'd have to recalibrate all the budgets, but there's a buffer of about $750,000 that will be, I call it surplus at the end of the fiscal year. So that's based on current projections, this and that. So everything would have to be calibrated. You lower this, and then where are you going to wind up? And obviously, $750,000 year in, year out is not a buffer that's necessary.
And we don't want to give any to the state.
You betcha.
Just to go back to your question, that acting director
And whoever said up there, you took the $1.5 million budget, divided by 7,000 employees, it's $214 per person.
But it's only 750,000, not 1.5.
No, the budget's 1.5. Or thereabouts.
Yes.
So, what kind of fees do they charge different people? Because it used to be $5 to register every single application. That doesn't happen a lot. There's other things that have gone away. Some of the late fees for like renewing your business license doubles if you get it late. So we have the set fees. How much money is generated on fines and those type of things? Because it seems to me that when I hear of things happening, the unlicensed people get a cease and desist, while a qualifying party might get a fine for $1,000 since the people are doing things underneath.
So that's a different
Money goes to state agencies.
Is there any way that they can grab that?
We've tried to do that for years.
Yeah.
With respect to answers. No. The answer is no and hell no.
Do you want me to run through
Yeah.
the statutory?
So we know if you're talking about fees, just
So your qualifying party is $150. Your qualifying party renewal is $150. Qualifying party renewal from inactive status, which we're getting, there was discussion to get rid of that, right? It's $25. Temporary qualifying party, $25. Business license application fee, $100. Business license renewal, $100. Branch office application, $50. Renewal, $50 for branch office. Late fee penalty, double any of those fees. Applicator license, $30. Applicator license renewal, $25. Duplicate license, $10.
That's what it says.
That's the statutory.
It's actually about that.
Is it?
It's categories because of the list. So, yeah.
yes, 250 and 200.
Dave Burns, I don't really see anything on the list, but I want everybody to understand. I believe that large business should pay a proportionate for a small business because they do tax the system. And I think it's unfair to small business that large business doesn't pay a fair share. I think the structure should be such that those people that either do more business or employ more people or some measurement of that type, those companies should pay more because they tax the system more than the one truck, two truck, five truck.
You put that in the
I made that statement for the last 10 years.
We've got it written down.
There's another point here which is not on this agenda, and I can be allowed to just a moment or two. And that is going to the comments of the last discussion in terms of what's in law and what's in regulation. I think one of the huge problems we have right now is we have far too much detail in law that could be in rules and be generally referenced and given the authority in law and make it much easier to manage changes in fees, make it much easier to manage a lot of detail. And I think that's huge component of what we're talking about.
All right, anything else on continuing education? We heard a little bit about it on the qualifying party. Any continuing education thoughts on qualifying party and licensed applicator?
I'm all for continuing education as long as it's updated and relevant.
And actually, I was going to say that's probably we get
Our buddy over there left because he got so mad.
we got the other side of the coin saying that we go to these things and they're the same all the time.
Yeah.
But I also, I guess I work for government, so I can say this. I put it back on the person themselves. Don't attend the same courses all the time. Go to something else and you can get something different than what.
I mean, biology is biology. I can go to a cockroach biology course that I took 35 years ago, it's going to be the same.
But
But there's a lot of other things that are
I think what Shelby said earlier about QPs having to have a higher requirement, I'm in favor of that because I'm in favor of keeping the QP. And I think one of the ways to show that it does matter if you're the QP is if that person has higher requirements for their licensure than just a plain applicator.
Right.
And maybe include something in the additional licensing or in the additional. That is my alarm going off. Where you have to have like 2 hours every year in what's new in the industry, so that the QP is required to stay up to date on, new chemicals, new procedures, new whatever is new.
That whole process could be managed much better.
Of course. It's the government, it can always be managed better.
I didn't say that.
And I think this maybe somewhat applies to this discussion, just an idea that has been brought up previously is do away with qualified parties having to keep an applicator license, which I agree with.
Well, in my mind, it's the same thing. So, you're both taking the same test.
The test I took was not the same as my other.
I'm sure. You took it, wasn't the only test, right?
I took it back in '95.
Yeah.
Can I answer that? Quick question. What entity is responsible for determining what classes we take are basically continuing education?
What qualified?
Yeah.
We do.
You do?
Yes.
So would it be, could we, and I know I don't want to make the system more convoluted, but could it be possible that then, OPM/Department of Ag then qualifies new courses for every year that people are required to take? So it has a 2012 certification course.
And actually, that's the way it works.
It is.
It has to be renewed every year.
Yeah, if you get in classes, you have to redo them all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I go, but I guess I don't pay attention.
Is it important to have to renew biology courses or whatever, the simple basic stuff every year? I actually had someone ask me that, who does see these. Every year or two, he's got to renew his courses on general basics about insects, and growth cycles, and all.
I'd have to say that for the past 10 years, I use the same outline, the same description. And it's been renewed every time.
Well, I understand that, but is there a fee to renew it every year?
No, there's no fee.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a fee.
They look at it and then they send me back and forth an updated course number.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. There's a model for that works very well, and it's the certified public accountant requirement for continuing education and renewal, and there is oversight on what courses are approved. There is oversight on who can teach them and what their credentials are, and there is substantial oversight, although it's easy to do there, on exactly what the course content is, what the course outline would be. And I think that's something that's awfully big to bite off right now, but I think somewhere down the line, that might be a model that could be used
Well, I think
in our industry.
I think maybe perhaps applicators they can choose from a general, a group of courses, and the qualifying party have to take approved courses. I mean, I would actually be okay with that.
I've taken Steve's class, I've been to Target's practical classes, use a lot of test web classes. They are fabulous. So
Yeah.
Jack, you've approved all those and you guys are doing a good job. They're really good classes. If you actually pay attention, you read the stuff, you show up, you pay attention, they're really good courses.
They're really good courses. Yeah, I mean, we got Steve over to my office training us.
Anybody want a new course? I have a number.
Did you say 15, 16, 15?
Yeah, and Pastor, I love that. I mean, I'll be up all night. I love it. It's really good. So, great job. Huh? Yeah, I do.
Sure, we get along.
I do. I taught like 16 things.
We have to be out here in just a couple minutes, so.
Do you sponsor a thing every year with your Saguaro Council thing? I mean, because I've given talks on that before.
But that, no, we put a stop to that.
So you guys are no longer doing continuing education?
We do continuing education, but the task force actually, and PMAC also weighed in on, there are private firms out there that do continuing education.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
But what we do is we're going to provide continuing education on the laws, and we're going to provide continuing education on areas where we're finding problems, you know, to keep people in compliance. So if it is calibration, we're going to do something on calibration. You know, if we're finding there's a lot of shorts or whatever, we're going to do some training on calibration. You know, but we're also going to have a limited number of those courses, and so it's.
And can you charge to have people go to those?
We charge what is it, $10 right now?
A fee. Is that a fee?
But I don't think you make, technically, you can't make profit on it.
No.
Yeah.
It has to be for what the cost is.
Yeah, it actually says something about that in there, yeah.
All right. One last housekeeping note when somebody's got any concerns. If you haven't signed in, please sign in before you leave. We'll keep you all posted as to when we have another town hall meeting. I anticipate, are y'all thinking a couple more, 3 more, 4 more?
I don't know, probably another one in Phoenix next month, but we'll see.
Again, the advisory task force, February 15th, 10 o'clock, Department Ag.
And so what you're saying is actually this will continue then, even after this moves along further, too, you'll continue
yeah,
to do
kind
it.
of get into some of the other subjects, or if the task force wants us to solicit feedback, maybe that's something we bring up at the next meeting. If there's something specific we want from the industry, we can.
I was just thinking as this moves along, I mean, we can even have, that there will be language that potentially people can look at, so that's cool. I just want to say, I think that's good.
Jack, how many inspectors do you have?
6.
For the whole state?
Yes.
They're good ones.
And they're real bad. If you had to break down what they spend their time doing.
Inspecting in all courses while they're sweeping themselves.
So how much of it is chasing on reported licensed activity versus inspecting trucks and offices once a year for every business in their area versus, you know, what do they spend their time doing?
I can't tell you.
Can't tell you.
I just don't.
Because it just seems overly short.
6 seems like plenty to me.
But
Hey, there used to be a time there were 2 inspectors for the whole state.
well, but you know, I can turn in probably 20 bee companies that are unlicensed.
We have 6.
But actually, there's never been any bee companies who inspect.
So you got 12. There's 6 ag and 6 structural inspectors. Just so that's clear.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but in Department of Ag right now, we have a task or an activity tracking system, so we can actually give you an idea of where people are spending their time. And we'll get there with OPM too, but that's still, we're not one yet, we'll just live together.
I got in late, and well, but you guys had mentioned something about criminal background checks. You guys abolished that?
No, that continues on until the legislation or whatever happens. The task force has recommended that part of the report be that it no longer be a requirement of the state to require background to do that on their own, they can do that. And I always use the example, they already have advertisements on the radio for some folks that are doing that. We're doing that. We do criminal background investigations on all our employees.
Yeah, but often maybe in an industry where there's a standard already. Banking has a standard, actually the banking
I was thinking it's like plumbing.
But I tell you, as a business, you're better off doing your own background check.
Yeah.
We do background checks, we get them within 4 or 5 days. Whereas when you run it through the state, you never hear, you finally get a notice about 5 or 6 weeks later, yeah, you're clear to go test.
But that's fine, but why does the state require that this applicant then have a background check?
Yeah, wouldn't you rather know in 3 days if you've got a sicko on your hands?
Oh, yeah.
Or find out in 6 weeks after he's been out there?
There is a difference. So the state is going through the entire FBI system,
Right.
whereas like.
Yeah, I know that, so you're relying on it, but still.
Well, that's the question that I'm getting. The state can find out a hell lot more information than I can find out.
Question. I used to do background checks before the state required it, so I don't think it's a big deal. I'm always going to do it. It's too many resources. But the does part concern me if it's a business license, will they do a background check for somebody who's applying for a business license or qualified party license? Because that's, to me, that's a different one.
Well, I took it as none of them. And who do you do a background investigation on when you're doing a corporation?
Qualified party. I don't know. There's no easy answer to all of that.
Okay, I hate to be rude, but I'd like to thank the U of A Heat Science Lab for letting us use this room free of charge. The lady is coming to lock it up because on her own private time. I'm sure not interested in qualifying parties. Thank you all very much for coming.